So this is Anna. She's, I think, the latest addition to the equestrian club, and she's a big girl. Her withers are a little bit above me, so I must put her at about 17 hands. So let's crack on. She's got big feet, but they're, for a big horse, big heavy horse, they don't grow an awful lot. You'd expect a horse of her size and build to grow masses of foot, but unfortunately she doesn't. She grows enough to keep them on and have enough room for some new nails, but it's not brilliant. She's also been lame for a few days, which the owner or the carer or the lady that looks after them has poulticed, drawn out some pus, and she's now sound again. I'm going to have a little look, see where it came from, see if there's any remaining problems or issues. Get this big shoe off. Doesn't look all that big, but it's pretty monstrous for the horses I do. This weather we've had nothing but rain and snow and horrendous weather. There's mud everywhere. It's really taken a toll on their feet, softened them up so much, which is why I've had so many lame horses, so many with punctured soles, pus in the foot, because the conditions make the foot so soft that anything can penetrate, cause an infection. You only need a little bit of grit, which at the moment there's loads of in solution because there's so much mud about. It gets in a little hole, causes an infection, they go lame. I've had loads and loads and loads in the last few weeks. I'm fed up with all this mud. Never mind, it'll soon be over. They say spring's on its way. This is the first bit of sunshine we've had for, oh well, can't think the last bit of sun we had. We've only just got rid of the snow. There's still snow laying around in places. Alright, we'll trim this off and say not much for a big horse. Get rid of some of the muck. The frogs are very soft and squidgy with the wet. The foot in general is very soft. Then in the summer they go rock hard again and start complaining about the feet being too hard. So can't really win. So there's a little bit of bruising at the toe there. Don't quite know what's caused that. Right, this is where the pus was, or was coming from. Just see down there towards the frog. There's a little channel there. There it goes. Let's clean the muck out of there. But just carefully pare that back because it's soft underneath where the sort of sensitive part is. It looks pretty clean now, so she's done a good job getting it all out. It's not soft, she's not feeling it. There's no more pus apparent, so we'll leave well alone. There's no point covering it up, because if there is any pus or dirt or muck or anything left in there, it could well flare up if you cover it. So it's easier just to leave it open. Let nature take its course, really. If we had ideal situations where these horses could be kept in, Anna particularly has taken a little while to settle in here. and she doesn't like being left in, doesn't like being on her own, and a horse of this size would demolish a stable in a matter of minutes if she really felt like it. But we don't have ideal situations. These horses live out in these fields year in, year out. The only time they come in really is to be attended to for me, or for the vet, or you know, if there's something wrong with them. I keep getting asked, I will address the situation. Does it hurt? No, of course it doesn't. You imagine this horse, especially like this horse, Anna, she's got to weigh 1.5 tons probably. Now, if she was in any way against what I'm doing, I'd be over that fence and she'd be creating merry hell. So you can tell by the way she's just standing here, quite happy, basking in the sunshine that we've got today, that it's not worrying her in the slightest. And that goes for all the horses. You do get some horses that don't like it. Some have been badly treated when they were young, or have had a bad experience of some sort. But in general, if they're handled from the day they're born and got used to just general handling, picking their feet up, cleaning them out, pulling their legs about so that they get used to the actions that you're going to do, and when it comes to when they're 3 or 4 years old and you want shoes on them, you'll have no problem whatsoever. It's the horses that you get, some of these unscrupulous dealers, they'll breed a horse, chuck it out in the field from the day it's born, leave it out there without even taking a second look at it until it's 3 years old, drag it out the field and expect some poor farrier to put shoes on it. Well, I'm sorry, it ain't going to happen. That horse isn't going to like it. The farrier's not going to like it. The horse will probably get a bad name, bad reputation, or even worse, it might have to be sedated, or they may restrain it in other ways, and that horse isn't going to like it. But if they're treated well from the day they're born, you'll have no problems. People say, what about wild horses? Well, there aren't such a thing as wild horses. I don't know if you've read in the news recently. Wild horses don't exist anymore. The horses that are out there are feral horses, which is basically a horse that used to be domesticated, which has been either released or escaped. And either way, wild or feral, the way they look after their feet is they have to forage for food, so they're moving constantly from paddock or from place to place looking for food, and that's what keeps their feet in check. Domesticated horses that just live in fields and don't have to forage, they need their feet attending to. Just like you, trim your nails. If you didn't, they get ragged, chip, break, be in a hell of a mess. And the reason they need shoes, because I always get asked this as well, is again because they're domesticated. They're under saddle, they're carrying a rider, and they're having to travel on man-made roads, tarmac, concrete, gravel, and their feet are not designed for it in domesticated horses, because they've been crossbred with horses with poor feet over the years, and they've bred their natural resilience out. You do get a lot of horses that can go without shoes. I've got lots of horses on my books, I just trim them. But when they're doing lots of work, they do need shoes, or they benefit from shoes. You know, you get these barefoot people say you can do without, but I'm sorry, I've yet to see one that can do a few hours on the roads. It ain't gonna happen, bro. I know I'll get lots of criticisms about it's not natural and all the rest of it, but this is what I've been doing for 40 odd years, and has been done for thousands of years beforehand. Yes, there are glue-on shoes, there's boots, there's all sorts of other alternatives, but in this country glue-ons don't work because of the wet. You know, you get a couple of months during the year maybe that you've got dry enough conditions that you might be able to glue them on, but the rest of the year it's hopeless. I've tried them, been there, done that, and we always come back to the good old steels. So I'm going to stick those in. They can be warming up while I stick these other two on. Make sure it's level. So Anna's I think she's the most recent addition to the club. This is the Grammar School Club, Grammar School Equestrian Club. It's a school that has its own pony club for the students. It was set up, oh, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 35, 40 years ago by the caretaker at the school. He bought a couple of old ponies and kept them in the school grounds out the back. Well, as things have developed, he retired. One of the teachers took it over, then she retired, and it's now been taken over by another teacher, and she runs it very efficiently. The kids thoroughly enjoy it, and they survive with help from parents, students, and kind donations of ponies like Anna and all majority of the others from either ex-students or people who've had the horses for the children have grown out of them, but they didn't want to part with them, so they get a new lease of life here at the club. There was another horse that was owned by the same people as Anna that was here, which sadly died recently. I think it had colic. Couldn't survive it. So the majority of the horses here and ponies are old. Very few youngsters here. Well, no such thing as a youngster at this club, but they all get looked after very well. And as I say, they get a new lease of life. Some of them have been stood in fields, lonely and sad for a couple of years, and then they get brought here. The kids love them. They get groomed and fed and generally pampered. It takes years off them, and they love it. It's a win-win situation. The kids benefit, the ponies benefit. Great little club. Alright, let's see if we can stick these two on. Now in this country, I know lots of you watch this from all over the world, but in this country it's illegal for anyone that's not qualified and registered to shoe a horse. So that's why this is my job. I get a lot of people on some of my other videos saying, oh, don't you look after your horse well? It's not my horse. This is my job. I go around all day shoeing other people's horses because they're not qualified to do so. So I spent 4 years at college and a lifetime of experience learning how to do this. Started off with a what they call a master. I trained with him whilst going to college, and I stayed with him for about 9 years, I think, in total. Then went out on my own, and this is just about my 40th year at it. Started in 78, so 2018. It's a long while in a back-breaking job. That's why you don't want horses to mess about. You want them well behaved. Not only can they cause you severe injuries, they can just mess your back up a treat. I've already got enough trouble with hands and shoulders, so I love these ponies that don't care. You can see I'm hammering away on that foot. There's no flinching. She's not bothered in the slightest. You know, I get people say, "Oh, you're wailing on those nails." No, I'm not. I'm just tightening the shoe up by hammering the nail deep into the fullering, which is the groove in the shoe, and that bends the end of the nail over on the wall side, causing a nice tight fit. And when I get to the point where I need to do what's called finishing off, that really secures them till next time. Although Anna's feet aren't particularly brilliant, because she's a big horse, there's plenty of foot to nail to. Again, even though it's a bit soft at the moment, I can get some decent nails up pretty high to get a good purchase and keep them on nice and tight. They last 6 to 8 weeks on average before they need doing again, and even if the shoes aren't worn out, the feet generally need trimming, so we can do what's called a remove or refit, where we just take them off, trim the feet and put them back on again. That's it, tight. Alright, get the next two. One's this side. I've trimmed a bit out the video. I've already taken the old shoes off and fitted these, just so I don't bore you to death. Just tidy the frog up a little bit more there, so we don't cause a stone trap, which is basically when the frog and the shoe overlap and you get a bit of a pocket where the stones can lurk. Other question I get asked quite regularly, was two actually. Do I ever burn myself? Yes, quite regularly. Do I ever hit my fingers? No, very rarely. Once in a while, if the horse moves suddenly or I take my eye off the pencil. But no, hitting my fingers isn't a common one. Hitting my knee is more common. I miss the nail completely and slip and hit my knee. fingers, touch wood, are pretty lucky. So just put the pincers under the head of the, or the end of the nail, hammer the nail into the fullering, that groove, that tightens everything up. Make sure there's no slop in it. So when I finish off, I'll be pulling the nails down nice and tight to the foot. Caught the strap from her rug around her leg. Someone might ask, why am I not using copper nails on this horse, whereas I use them on all the others? Very simple answer is they don't make them big enough in copper. These are big nails going in these big shoes. That's something you probably may not have even realised. Each shoe has different sized nails in. The bigger the shoe, obviously the bigger the nail. Smaller the shoe, the smaller the nail, and they don't make them big enough in copper. The poor old Anna, so she has to make do with the ordinary ones. I dare say in time, as demand increases, they might make them in copper, but at the moment they don't. And that's the nail I've been looking for. That's the last one. Tighten this one up. Another question I get asked, what does it smell like, that burning? Just like burning hair. You take a bit of your hair and burn it, that's exactly what this smells like, because the feet are essentially made of exactly the same thing as your hair, keratin. Good old girl, look, she's not bothered in the slightest. Not even eating her hay. Yeah, so your feet are made of keratin, and they're basically strands and strands and strands of keratin, all arranged very, very tightly, running from top to bottom. They're like individual hairs almost, but they're compressed so tightly that it makes the foot hard. The frog is made of exactly the same stuff, but arranged less tightly, which is why it's soft. And again, the sole is made of the same stuff, again arranged in a different order, so that that is not as soft as the frog, but not as hard as the wall. So there's 3 different types of the same thing. All I'm doing here is trimming the nails down to a short length, cleaning out any bits of hoof underneath the nail, and then these things, clenching tongs, are pulling the nail back down and into the foot, so you're causing a little hook, and that's what holds the shoe on. I was always told as an apprentice, finishing off is the most important part of the whole shoeing process. You can trim perfectly, you can fit perfectly, and you can nail perfectly, but if you can't keep the shoe on by finishing off perfectly, it's a waste of time, the rest of it. So this is the most important part. And she's got a big crack running down the front of this foot. You can see it there. It's obviously been there for years and years. And what tends to happen, I don't know the horse well enough to know exactly what's happened, but I've had it in the past. you get a bit of damage right up in the hairline, which is called the coronary band. That's where the wall is produced from. Each hair is individually produced out of a tiny, tiny little teat-like projection called a papillae. And if they get damaged and killed off, then the horn isn't produced in that particular spot. So that causes a crack running full length top to bottom. And that looks to be what's happened in this case, because it goes right to the very top into the coronary band. And providing she's shod regularly and kept, or even just trimmed regularly if she wasn't shod, that should be no problem to her whatsoever. If, however, shoes were left on too long or feet were left untended for long periods of time, that could split wide open and she could be in quite a bit of pain. But providing, as I say, everything's looked after, it won't bother her in the slightest. So, that's just about the fronts done. The foot grows down and forwards, which is why we're always taking stuff off the toe, because the foot's growing constantly forward, so we need to keep the angle correct. Because the shoe's on there, it can't wear itself naturally, so regular shoeing and even regular trimming if they're domesticated is essential to keep the angles right. There we go, two nice little neat front feet. Yeah, good girl. Let's have a look at the back ones. Again, you know, she's offering me her foot. If that was objectionable to her, there's no way she'd be doing that. And that leg probably weighs about half as much as I do. She swung that about, gave it a decent thrash, I'd be over that fence. Another question I get asked: do I get kicked very often? Well, touch wood, luckily no. I've been injured more holding on to horses for other farriers than shoeing myself, luckily. Don't like to talk about it much, don't want to jinx myself. But if I'm doing a hind foot like now, if she was to kick out, the chances are she would literally just, because she's already in contact with my leg, she would just push me halfway across the field. Because believe me, a horse this size is so powerful. So I wouldn't actually probably get a kick, but I could get quite injured because I've been thrown a great distance across the field. And if there was something in the way, like a fence, my truck, a wall, anything hard, I could get injured. As I say, luckily 90% of my clients' horses are well behaved. There you go, she's offering me her foot. So we're just about there. So I've shortened the video, but it takes just about an hour, maybe just a little bit over, to do a horse. And it's hard work. Now what I'm doing there, you might have noticed I've done it on a lot of them, I'm just tidying up where the shoe is away from the foot. You might wonder why that's away. It's to give support further out. There's lots of reasons, but the main one is to get the support slightly out away from the wall at the heels. And the reason it's chamfered like that is so that if she stood on it, or another horse stood on it, that bit that's sticking out, hopefully the horse's foot or whatever she caught it on or whatever would just slide off because it's chamfered rather than a sharp edge. And also so that if she was to knock her other leg with the shoe, because it's chamfered off, it would be less likely to cut her. It was more likely to just sort of bounce off the other leg rather than cut into it. So there you go. Look at her. Really worried, isn't she, about that? Good old Anna. There's my next victim, Wiz. But I'm going to have a little rest for a minute. And whilst I'm resting, I'll go and put her away first. And whilst I'm resting, little Ralph will have a little snack. That's another thing I get asked. What did I feed the dog? On one of my videos I've cut a piece of frog off and fed it to my other dog. This is my new dog, Ralph. They love it. Every yard I go to, all my friends are dogs because they just crowd round me after hoof. It's good for them in moderation. Now, you might wonder what this is. I'm suffering a little bit today because I've got a couple of sore ribs. I walked into a machine at work. Hey ho. Carry on to the next one.